guys? Paulie malignaggi here for Paulie TV, and we are up to fight week. It's the big one, Golovkin versus Canelo, Canelo versus Golovkin. However you want to call it, the trilogy is going to come to an end. We assume. I mean, unless Golovkin wins, then we might probably get one more fight out of this whole shindig. I'll tell you what, we're going to review the first couple of fights. The first one, I think most people at the time thought Golovkin won the fight pretty handily. There was an atrocious scorecard handed in by Adelaide Bird that everybody made a big stink about. With time having passed, I noticed some people all of a sudden now are saying that they thought Canelo didn't do bad in the first fight. I thought he did horrible. I didn't think it was close. I thought there was something that I don't think there was any reason to even debate that scorecard, that decision, or whatever you want to say. The second fight was Canelo and Golovkin 2. You know, that one was a bit more competitive, and you know, we saw some really fine adjustments made by Canelo Alvarez coming forward, putting Golovkin on the back foot. I thought it was a good fight. I thought it was a tactical fight. I thought it was a fight where both guys made very good adjustments. Because I also thought Golovkin boxed very well on the back foot when he was forced to. Some people just gave it to Canelo, I think, based on the fact that he just came forward. I don't really base it that way. This thing is called boxing. It's not called come forward. I slightly edged the second fight to Golovkin as well, but I don't have a problem if you had gave it to Canelo for a couple of reasons. Number one, he did land his own share of good shots. It was very competitive. And number two, Golovkin was the one that said, you know what, meet me in the middle of the ring. We're going to fight Mexican style. And then he wasn't able to uphold his end of the bargain, and it was Canelo who was coming forward, battling it out. So, you know what, in my mind, this fight could be easily 1-1, and we could be going into a trilogy that could end the rivalry. But you know, for me, the absolute horrible scorecard of Adelaide Bird and the absolute atrocity of shame of the first fight draw gives us an opportunity for a fourth fight, which I don't even know. I don't know what to think about going into this third fight, because at first, when they first signed it, I was like, man, this is an easy knockout for Canelo. You know, I don't think Golovkin looked really good in the Murata fight. He's 40 years old. He's fading. I mean, listen, aging is a real thing, guys. If aging wasn't a real thing, all of us would still be fighting today, right? All the greats of the past would still be fighting. So aging is a real thing, no matter what anybody says. And Golovkin at 40 years old is not going to be the same fighter he was 5 or even 10 years ago. Having said that, as the fight gets closer, I do start to question it both ways. While at first, when the first got signed, I was like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew that Canelo was going to make him wait for the third fight until he can knock him out. But now I'm starting to wonder, you know, Canelo didn't look really motivated in the Bivol fight. Has he made too much money? Has he decided that, you know, he's not willing to dig down the way he used to want to in order to achieve greatness, in order to achieve victory, in order to, you know, just prove the naysayers wrong and make a statement in his own right, you know, because Golovkin may be past his prime, and he may be, you know, not the same Golovkin he was before, but he's still really, really strong, and he's still pretty adept at knowing how to win fights if you're not at your best. And Ryota Murata, who was not, for me, was a pretty good fighter, but not elite level, found that out. Even though he was able to trouble Golovkin early on, he was finally knocked out by the older Golovkin. So, you know, it leaves you to wonder, well, based on what I saw in the Bivol fight, in the Canelo Bivol fight, you know, I felt like Bivol was bigger. I felt like Bivol was better than they anticipated. But the issue I have with the Bivol fight, with Canelo's performance there, is he seemed too willing to accept the defeat. He didn't really dig his heels in and say, you know what, I'm going to fight back. I'm going to risk myself to get this win because it's not going my way, and I got to make an adjustment. I got to make a change here in this fight. And to me, that shows a lack of desire, a lack of motivation, and, you know, possibly having made too much money. Who knows? You know, don't get me wrong. I don't think he would have beat Bivol anyway. But I would have liked to see him make the effort and put himself on the line in order to get the victory, to show me, and more importantly, show his own fans that the victory was important for him. You know, that it did mean something to him, and he wasn't just about whatever. You know, I made so much money, and I'm going to pick up this check too and go home and I'll take the L. So that's where it leads me to question now. I started to think more about that, and I started to wonder, is Golovkin, even though he's older, is he more motivated than Canelo? If it comes time to bite down on the mouthpiece and really be willing to suffer to win the fight for both guys, is Golovkin going to be the one that's more willing to suffer? Or is Canelo, coming off of that loss to Bivol, does he now have something to prove and has a new chip on his shoulder, which I think he needs to. I think all fighters need to have that chip on their shoulder. Does he now have that chip on his shoulder, and he's going to come and do what I initially thought he would do when they first signed this fight, which is knock Gennady Golovkin out to become the first fider to knock out Gennady Golovkin, an older, more faded Gennady Golovkin, but Gennady Golovkin nonetheless. So that's, to me, is the debate. That to me is the debate going into this fight. You know, when you really look into it more, at first you kind of think, Canelo got this easily. You know, it is what it is. He made him wait, and all the other stuff I initially thought. Now, as we're getting into the fight and when it's fight week, I start to wonder, What about Canelo's motivation? What do we have to say about that? Do we need to question it after the Bivol fight? And I think there are legitimate questions to be asked when it comes to this, because Khamil Golovkin still seems motivated. He still seems like he's got something to prove. Obviously, the Canelo rivalry has left a bad taste in his mouth. I mean, if you put yourself in Golovkin's shoes, I think you'd have a bad taste in your mouth too. So I think he's coming into this last fight with that extra chip on his shoulder. I think Canelo is coming into it really looking for something to motivate himself for, but may not be as motivated as we like him to be, And if it gets tough, if the fight gets into a sort of a firefight, or sort of a situation where you've got to make some tough choices, is Canelo going to be willing to make those tough choices and risk getting himself knocked out? I think Golovkin is going to risk getting himself knocked out. I really do. I think if the fight gets tough, I think Golovkin wants to win this fight so badly that he'd risk himself getting knocked out and may even get himself knocked out in the process, Because like I said, he's not the same fighter, but I still think he in his mind, he wants to be, and he wants to definitely, have a part in this rivalry, have a win in this rivalry. So I think he would be willing to get himself knocked out. But if Canelo is in a tough situation and the fight becomes that kind of a fight where it goes down, he gets dragged into the mud, is Canelo going to be willing to make the choice to get himself knocked out? And that's where I think there are legitimate questions based on the way he fought Bivol and based on the way he just didn't really react and fight back against Bivol. And like I said, you can question his heart, or maybe you can just question automatically, just has he made too much money? Has he been at the top? This is a kid that's been at the top of boxing for a long time. Let's face it, he fought Mayweather a long time ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, this kid's been fighting top level opposition for a while. So it's not like, he's had a couple of years run and you say, oh, you know what, it got to his head. He's been at the top of the game for a decade, making a ton of money and getting the recognition that one of his level deserves. So is he just tired? Is he burned out? Has he just been fighting too much? Because fighting is not just the physical stress, it's also the mental stress of dealing with the big promotions, dealing with the attention, dealing with the accolades. There may be legitimate questions to ask about Canelo going into the fight for this regard. So even if after my initial thought I thought this fight wasn't going to be that interesting, and I just thought that Canelo would steamroll Golovkin and older faded Golovkin, I now am starting to wonder if there are situations, if a situation presents itself where Canelo may have to dig down and he may not be willing to. I think those are legitimate questions. I think they're legitimate questions for all fans to ask themselves, if you're a Canelo fan or if you're not a Canelo fan. And I think it makes it all the more reason to watch the fight so we can all find out. So I think, I don't know what you think. I'd like to leave you to leave me some comments and give me your opinion on these matters, because I think there's a legitimate debate and talking point, especially coming in as we're coming into fight week. So I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Does Canelo blow out Golovkin in this fight? Does Golovkin come in with more motivation, and even at 40 years old, is he going to be able to win the fight if Canelo's motivated? And if it gets to a firefight, will Canelo's motivation be diminished, and will Golovkin be able to take advantage of that? Will Golovkin be willing to get himself knocked out in the process? I'm betting that he would be willing to get himself knocked out just to try to win the fight. I'm willing that he's willing to risk it all. I'm not sure if Canelo is. What are your thoughts? My prediction, depending on obviously it's dependent on those questions and those factors that I'm describing. I think Golovkin doesn't have enough left. I think Canelo Alvarez will knock out Gennady Golovkin. That's my prediction for this fight. But I still think those are legitimate questions to be raised, and I want to know what you guys think about them. I'm Paulie Malignaggi, and this is Paulie TV.